Before anyone could have expected it, the most exciting player in women's basketball suddenly found herself in a heartbreaking moment. The same superstar who only months earlier was confidently pulling up from the logo, sinking impossible three-pointers over stretched defenders and delivering no-look passes that left entire arenas frozen in amazement, is now doubled over at center court. Both hands rest on her knees, and her face is twisted in pain, not the kind that can simply be brushed aside or overcome with determination, but the kind that immediately signals something is seriously wrong. The arena goes completely silent, not the respectful hush before a free throw, but the genuine silence where thousands of fans instinctively stop breathing because every instinct tells them they are witnessing something they were never meant to see. What makes this even more alarming is that this scene didn't happen just once this season, and it didn't happen twice either. It happened 4 different times with lower body injuries in less than 2 months. Even after every setback, the Indiana Fever continued stepping in front of the cameras with the exact same carefully polished message: day to day, minor discomfort. As the updates continued, the message remained remarkably familiar. She was said to be progressing well, and each time the basketball world accepted that explanation, patiently waited for another update, and eventually moved on. Yet the meaningful update everyone was hoping for never truly came because a much larger story has been unfolding behind the headlines. What Caitlin Clark is experiencing right now isn't just about injuries. It's about power, who holds it, who benefits from it, and what ultimately gets sacrificed when a league starts placing a player's commercial success above the long-term health of the athlete herself. Somewhere between the sold-out arenas, the record-breaking television ratings, the soaring jersey sales, and the constant media attention, the Indiana Fever, and perhaps even the league as a whole, appeared to make a quiet calculation. And Caitlin Clark is ultimately the one paying the price. Before most people realized what was unfolding, a much deeper injury crisis had already begun taking shape behind the scenes. Once you recognize the pattern, it becomes almost impossible to ignore. By the time Caitlin Clark went down against the Connecticut Sun, those who had been paying close attention had already noticed something the official injury reports never seemed eager to fully explain. This no longer looked like random bad luck. Instead, it resembled a chain reaction, a slow-moving collapse that had been building ever since the opening week of the season. It began with the left quad. Officially, it was described as simple tightness, followed by rest, treatment, and clearance for the next game, with nothing to worry about. Then came the left groin with the same explanation attached to a different injury, followed by the right groin. Before fans had even finished processing that setback, the same lower body region flared up once again, this time on the opposite side under an entirely different pattern of physical stress. At first glance, every injury seemed isolated, but together they revealed a very different picture. Orthopedic specialists who are not affiliated with the Fever and who have analyzed the publicly available footage and timeline from the outside have pointed to a phenomenon with a very specific name: compensatory injury cycling. The concept is not difficult to understand. When one muscle group is injured but does not receive enough time to recover completely, the surrounding muscles, tendons, and joints begin taking on extra workload to protect the weakened area. For a period, the body adapts, but eventually those overloaded muscles begin breaking down as well. One injury quietly leads to the next. The left side gets hurt, the right side compensates, and eventually the right side reaches its limit. Soon, the left side begins tightening once again as it tries to protect the opposite side, causing the entire cycle to repeat itself over and over. What appears to be nothing more than terrible luck is often something far more predictable, a domino effect hidden behind separate injury reports. For years, elite sports medicine has consistently emphasized that the only dependable way to break this cycle is through complete recovery, proper rehabilitation, and enough uninterrupted rest to allow the body to fully heal before returning to full competition. Instead, Clark has continued receiving managed minutes, optimistic public updates, and constant reassurance that everything remains under control. Several specialists who have reviewed the publicly available timeline, without access to her confidential medical records, have noted that the sequence of injuries does not resemble a typical day-to-day situation, not even close. Soft tissue injuries that continue moving through the same region generally require recovery measured in weeks rather than days, and that assumes the athlete is temporarily removed from competition, follows a carefully structured rehabilitation program, limits practice intensity, reduces travel demands, and avoids repeated physical stress until the healing process is complete. Instead, Clark has continued traveling across the country, logging significant minutes, fulfilling media responsibilities, appearing at promotional events, and smiling for cameras almost every week. All of that naturally leads to one deeply uncomfortable question. That naturally leads to another important question. Did the Fever truly understand how serious this situation had become? It's difficult to believe they didn't. Professional medical staffs monitor circumstances like these every single day, and recognizing injury patterns is a fundamental part of their responsibility. The real issue isn't whether they knew. The real issue is what decisions were made after they recognized the warning signs. That question opens the door to a much broader conversation about what happens when a once-in-a-generation athlete becomes far more than just a basketball player. She becomes a business. Long before the opening tip of the season, subtle warning signs were already beginning to emerge, even though most fans simply couldn't see them. People familiar with Clark's off-season preparation have indicated that she entered her rookie campaign noticeably stronger than she had been in college after intentionally adding significant muscle mass. The reasoning made perfect sense. The WNBA is one of the most physical basketball leagues in the world, and veteran players had made it abundantly clear that dominating college basketball would not automatically prepare anyone for the speed, strength, and relentless physical contact waiting at the professional level. Clark responded the way elite competitors always do. She trained harder, lifted heavier, and transformed her body to better absorb contact while continuing to perform under constant defensive pressure. However, sports scientists and high-performance trainers understand something many casual fans rarely consider. Building muscle is only one part of the equation. An integrated movement adaptation process is more than just another sports science phrase. It can quietly become the hidden force that reshapes an athlete's entire body. When new muscle is added before the body has fully adapted to moving with it, biomechanics begin changing in subtle yet meaningful ways. Every stride starts feeling different, hip alignment gradually shifts, and the knees and ankles begin absorbing force from slightly different angles. Even something as natural as a jump shot or shooting release can be affected when the muscles supporting those movements have changed in size, strength, and overall balance. For Caitlin Clark, the movement patterns she had spent her entire life refining, the same mechanics that helped make her the consensus #1 overall pick, were suddenly being executed by a body that was undeniably stronger, but still learning how to move with maximum efficiency. Her strength had improved, yet her biomechanics were still catching up. Then the WNBA season arrived. There is no gradual introduction to professional women's basketball, no easing into the speed of the game, no protected adjustment period, and no luxury of allowing a rookie's body to slowly adapt. The schedule arrives like a freight train with back-to-back games, cross-country flights, constant time zone changes, and relentless competition that pushes even experienced veterans to their physical limits. For Clark, that demanding workload came with a burden almost no other rookie had to shoulder. She wasn't simply playing basketball, she was becoming the face of the league. While her teammates tried to squeeze every possible minute out of limited recovery windows, Clark's calendar quickly filled with national television appearances, sponsor commitments, media interviews, promotional events, and countless public obligations layered on top of one of the toughest schedules in professional sports. Every appearance required energy, every trip demanded recovery she never fully received, and every obligation quietly added more stress to a body already struggling to keep pace. One biomechanics specialist who works with elite track athletes described a situation like Clark's in remarkably simple terms. When you fundamentally change the movement foundation of a world-class athlete and immediately expose that athlete to elite competition without allowing enough time for adaptation, it's like asking a finely tuned race engine to perform using the wrong fuel. At first, it still runs. Sometimes it even performs brilliantly. But beneath the surface, damage is slowly and steadily accumulating. Small inefficiencies gradually grow into much larger problems. Extra strain begins spreading from one muscle group to another, and nothing appears catastrophic until the day everything finally reaches its breaking point. That breaking point came 4 different times this season, yet each time the Fever publicly treated it as though it were an unexpected surprise. Some moments in sports become unforgettable, not because of the final score, but because they reveal everything happening behind the scenes. The Fever's matchup against the Connecticut Sun became one of those defining moments. When Clark went down, it wasn't simply the mechanics of the injury that shocked everyone. Professional athletes get injured, and every fan understands that reality. What truly stopped people in their tracks was the expression on her face. Caitlin Clark had spent weeks playing through obvious physical discomfort without letting anyone fully see how much she was hurting. She rarely complained, rarely showed frustration, and rarely even allowed herself the luxury of a prolonged grimace. But this time was different. She walked off the court looking as though something inside her had finally given way, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. With nearly every step, she looked toward the bench before instinctively bending forward, a posture every athlete recognizes as someone desperately trying to breathe through overwhelming pain. Then came something fans almost never witness from competitors at her level: tears. Real tears. Not the emotional tears that follow a championship victory or the disappointment after a heartbreaking loss. These were the tears that surface when months of frustration, fear, relentless pain, emotional exhaustion, and physical breakdown all collide in one devastating moment. There was simply nothing left to hide because her body hadn't been carrying only strained muscles. It had also been carrying months of accumulated physical and emotional stress. For months, everything was described as manageable. For months, she returned before making a complete recovery. For months, she battled through pain while hoping the next game wouldn't become the next setback. And for months, there simply wasn't enough uninterrupted time for genuine healing to truly begin. Yet how did the Indiana Fever officially describe the situation? Slight discomfort. Take a moment to think about those 2 words. A player who was visibly crying, struggling to walk, and unable to move comfortably after suffering her 4th lower body injury in less than 8 weeks was still officially described by the organization as dealing with slight discomfort. Language like that is never chosen by accident. It shapes public perception, reassures sponsors, avoids unnecessary panic, keeps future options open, and protects the business while revealing as little as possible. Most importantly, it allows the league's biggest attraction to appear much closer to returning than she may actually be. The comparison many fans immediately drew wasn't unreasonable. Imagine if a top 5 NBA superstar, such as LeBron James or Stephen Curry, had suffered 4 lower body injuries within 2 months at the beginning of his career, then ended up on the bench in visible tears. The sports world would have come to a complete stop. Medical experts would dominate television coverage, specialists would analyze every available detail, organizations would face difficult questions, and every discussion would center on protecting the player's long-term future. Instead, Caitlin Clark received what felt far more like a routine weather report than a serious medical update. Perhaps the clearest indication of just how concerning this situation has become can be found in what happened next. According to people with direct knowledge of the situation, Clark is no longer relying solely on the Indiana Fever's internal medical staff. That isn't merely online speculation. Reports indicate that her camp has begun assembling its own independent team of medical experts, professionals with no connection to the organization, and therefore no institutional pressure to soften their conclusions. In a situation like this, that independence matters because the real concern is not just treating pain in the moment, but making sure the same problem is not being rushed back into action before the body has actually stabilized. The group reportedly includes biomechanics specialists dedicated to refining elite movement patterns, experts in regenerative medicine whose work is commonly associated with NBA franchises and Olympic-level athletes, and soft tissue rehabilitation specialists who view injuries not as issues to simply manage until the next game, but as structural problems that must be addressed at their source. For a player whose game depends so heavily on explosiveness, balance, footwork, and constant changes of direction, even a small mechanical flaw can create a chain reaction that keeps showing up in different places. That is why the recovery methods reportedly being explored extend far beyond traditional team protocols. They include comprehensive biomechanical retraining designed to identify exactly how Clark's movement mechanics have changed and why those imbalances continue contributing to new injuries. Regenerative therapies intended to accelerate muscle tissue repair and hyperbaric oxygen treatments aimed at reducing inflammation while increasing oxygen delivery to damaged cells, supporting recovery deep beneath the surface where true healing begins. In addition to that, the process likely involves closely monitoring workload, rebuilding strength from the ground up, and correcting compensation patterns before they become permanent habits. This is not simply another rehabilitation plan. It represents a complete reset, an acknowledgement that the previous approach may not have merely fallen short. It may have allowed the problem to continue growing until starting over became the only realistic path forward.